viable, non-economically viable, non-heritage friendly viable proposal that seems to be an obsession of this council, this administration, which is the construction of a relief road that seems not to be justified on any realistic, viable, economic heritage grounds.
Thank you. Councillor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I understand and take assurance from your remarks that we will be able to revisit some aspects of consultation dimension of this session as they apply to specific policies that we address in subsequent sessions. Is that correct?
No, I want to come on to, when we look at the matters, I want to come on to the questions that I posed in my matters and issues. Consultation, I've taken points on that and I've asked the Council for their response.
Yes, you did, but I think at that stage you also said that if there were issues to do with the evidence base or absence thereof in relation to the consultation process, that could be identified in the policy sections of the inquiry.
You can only make representations on matters that you've already made a representation about,
yes,
and that you've been invited to speak. So I think...
No, I'm understood.
Yes, so I think if you're at the session and it's a
Yes.
matter that you've raised, then yes, by all means.
Okay.
But in terms of consultation, I have addressed that as a legal compliance issue, which is the matter that we're looking at now. Where as we move on, I want to explore some of the issues that I've set out in my matters and issues.
But I think there are fundamental things that we will reach when we get to certain policies where referencing back to failures in the evidence base on which consultation stages were grounded
Yes.
will be critical to determining soundness at that point.
At that point, I want to know about the information that's contained in the background document and not the consultation, because that will have gone. I'm interested in the next part, which is the information that people want to put forward about the evidence.
I completely understand. I just wanted
That
to
makes
check
sense.
that I had understood your
Yes.
remarks 10 or 15 minutes ago when you
Yes.
concluded the consultation section of this session.
Yes. So I've read all the representations about consultation, and I understand the points everybody's
Right.
making. I've had the response from the council. The points on the matters and issues relating to the evidence base should be about that and not about any consultation process.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Is there anything else you need to say at this point?
I don't have anything to add to what's already been said on the questions 1 to 3, which I understand you dealt with, albeit in the order 1, 3, 2.
Yes.
If I'm following things correctly, but thank you.
I just want to, Ms. Morawiecka, do you want to...
Sorry, on Councillor Powers, have we covered off question 3 then?
Question 3.
In matters 1?
Yes, that's to do with the process. That's the process.
Oh, right, because, I mean, I don't know, if we're coming towards the end of that, I have got a few issues under that question, if we haven't yet covered it.
Okay. This is to do with the process. When we come to the individual matters and the evidence base, that's the sort of time to be discussing detailed technical issues. This is really about the process.
Right, well, the process I'd like to make regarding question 3, unless you want to, is it sustainability? I don't, evidence, I see on 3.3 in the council statement that evidence, you know, at each of the stages, the council's made all the consultation documents and the evidence base available. It was not available. This was particularly relevant in the summer when a lot of the modelling reports were not available. There has regularly been no information available on prior consultations about the issues that were raised by the original water steering group in 2009. And the case that on 3.5 that the council has built a robust evidence base that has informed the selection of the strategy. I'm sorry, I don't feel that, and we'll come on to it, that the nutrient management plan could be classified as robust evidence. I think it could be debated whether it could actually be a plan. as I've mentioned, I'm concerned that there's a complete lack of the hierarchy of the different grades of agricultural lands.
Yes, you don't need to repeat any of the
Right.
points.
And also, regarding the infrastructure delivery plan and the economic viability assessment, there is no economic viability assessment of the plan as a whole. And also, there are many elements missing from the infrastructure delivery plan or completely uncosted, which to my mind shows that this plan, very early on, is not economically viable. This was highlighted by Roger Tim and the Three Dragons in 2011, or I think, when they showed in their economic viability assessment that the plan was not sound on that basis.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes, just to clarify, given that I'm not going to be here, is it the case that we can refer back to the, for instance, the proposals for additional wording in the plan at a later date?
Yes, we come to those sections, you mean,
Yes.
the individual policies, yes. Right.
My question is, this slightly loose use of language in line with or will be informed by, in the case of things like the Hereford area plan, which previous government guidance in that specific case has indicated should be a precursor of the core strategy and not a follow-on document. I just wonder whether those statutory requirements embrace the sequencing of available evidence as well as the actual eventual arrival of that evidence.
Okay.
Very often after the documents on which consultation was being made, and this hooks back into the previous issue as well. So I'd be grateful for clarification on that. Thank you.
Right, yes, would you just like to pick up that point for me and just explain the role of that document in the time frame?
Thank you, Madam. As you'll see to my reader, we are attempting to find the most recent version of the local development scheme, so I can take you through that.
Well, you don't need to take me through in detail, I just need to explain the
Obviously, the point is well made in paragraph 4.1 and the first broad point that the core strategy is being brought forward in accordance with the local development scheme. And throughout the 7 years in which we've been preparing the plan, we've been consistently updating and refreshing that local development scheme. Lady Madam, you know that sets out the broader programme, both of the core strategy and the supporting documents that follow on from it. Madam, I submit to you that following on from that is exactly the process that is taking place. The various neighbourhood plans are working in coordination with and following on from that, and the key document that will follow on, hopefully from the adoption of the core strategy, is the Hereford Area Action Plan. We recognise that there is a detailed piece of work to be done there, and proper governance arrangements will be put in place to ensure that that is the case. Plainly, the evidence will overlap, and the evidence that we've assembled so far will feed into that plan, and no doubt there will be additional evidence that we will need to gather as we identify specific sites that will be required in an area action plan. Thank you.
Are these different points?
I wish to speak to the quality of the evidence base as we're concluding matter one. I've not had the opportunity to make this point.
I'd like you to do that.
So now?
Well, you need to do that with regard to specific, as we come on to the specific points. I'm going to ask you to do it at that point rather than make a general point now.
I am only here today until the very end of these hearings, and I understand matter one is general and overreaching issues.
It is. Have you got a general point?
I have, and it goes to the meta-narrative of who decides what goes in the evidence base and what is presented to the public, to members of the council and to other consultees as evidence. And I use the example of my own work. I've read a report commissioned by the council on renewable energy potential in the county. I thought there were flaws in it, so I wrote a robust critique and submitted it to the council for inclusion in the evidence base alongside the original report, which I thought was a reasonable thing to do as an engaged member of the public, and it was rejected.
Yes, so I'm interested in may I just stop you? Because I'm interested in the point about soundness, and so this is to do with it's to do with
I'm raising the question of the robust quality of the evidence-based size. The volume of evidence is no measure of its quality. And what I'm saying, the meta-narrative here, is that the evidence is selected and partial. It's not objective and impartial as required by law.
Mr. Mariatzko, do you have a different point?
Yes, I would seek clarification because, as Mr Ashcroft has mentioned, the Hereford area plan, one thing we have repeatedly requested is clarification what is meant by Hereford, because I understand that at different times, and depending on who's speaking, Hereford can mean a large number of multitude of parish councils, which includes Hereford and the rural areas, and it can mean Hereford city within the city boundary. And I do think this is very important, not only to the discussions, but also to the delivery of any plan, that boundaries need to be clearly set. This was reiterated to the planning department, Mr Ashcroft, in April 2010. Clear boundaries needed to be defined for the plan to be deliverable and to be implemented, and sadly this is still not there, and it gives me great concern, especially as we go forward.
I want to move on to other matters. So if there are matters that are going to be addressed when we come on to the day, or today for Hereford, which is where I'd like to look at that and follow through that point. Would you be able to do it at that? Well, I'm certainly going to ask that question anyway.
Well, yes, my concern is because obviously it was how was it evolved from the responses, and the Government Office of the West Midlands made it as a response to Mr Ashcroft in 2010,
yes,
and along with other comments that we'll come into later. But I cannot see that anyone at any time since 2010, i.e. the last 4 years, has addressed the issue of clear boundaries.
Mr. Buckingham, do you have a different point to make?
Yes, mine is a general matters query about minerals and waste, which I understand is being now excluded, yes, and the relationship that it will have with the core strategy going on. Yes. Will the core strategy be dependent on the results of the minerals and waste report?
Yes, let me just explain about minerals and waste. There's been significant changes in national policy, and fairly recent changes to the waste regulations for waste policy. And minerals, again, there's the NPPF has brought in all kinds of duties to cooperate. There was an assistant inspector who was a waste and minerals inspector who looked at those and had concerns about those policies not being up to date and not complying with the duties that were set out. Therefore, they will be taken out of this plan and become the subject of a separate plan. The way in which that will be done will be through modification, which we're going to speak about in detail with the Council as to date. So those policies are not to be examined, and they are coming out of this plan, therefore a separate plan. And that's, I think at this stage, I don't want to have that discussion at this point. I'd like to just come back to that, if I may, because I would like to move on. It's not a legal compliance matter, it's a matter to do with the main modification and any implications that follow on from that.
May I make a very brief response to that? And I very much appreciated your initial opening, saying that you were going to look at this in a pragmatic manner. And now, respectfully, you're saying that you're going to be talking to the Council about a report at some time in the future, which surely has a huge bearing.
No, sorry, I'm going to speak to the Council about the modification that goes into the plan. The plan will be, that'll be the Council's plan. I'll have no input into it whatsoever. What I'll be doing is looking at the modification that's needed to the core strategy, A, to take out those policies, and B, to say that there will be a separate minerals and waste plan.
And can there be any idea on timescales?
Well, this is what I'm going to come to, and I'm going to ask the Council to think about that and have that in there, have that in the paragraph which will explain about minerals, separate minerals and waste.
There's huge concern that we're reliant on the NPPF and developers will be running roughshod over the policies that we would like. So we must, please, I implore you to move this on as pragmatically as possible.
Yes.
Thank you.
My role will be looking at the wording of the modification, and that would be it. And that would be, I'd ask the council to consider timescale, etc. But as I say, there are quite a lot of new policies and to do with waste that need to be considered. I would like to move on to the next matter. Are there other points that you want to raise?
Regarding that waste of minerals, which I raised in my submission in the summer and subsequently, how can it be segregated when one of the strategic sites, for example, is currently on the mineral protection area?
Yes.
And regarding the employment sites, which we'll be doing on SS5, when the annual monitoring report makes reference to waste and sterilising waste capacity within Hereford, how can it be segregated? I'm a bit worried because obviously the local transport plan, the community infrastructure levy are now all out of the plan.
Well,
it's not a strategic plan. To my mind, I thought it was supposed to be a strategic plan. We seem to have lost it.
It is quite common to have a separate minerals and waste plan because it's very complicated. But, as you say, we need to address the issues that are raised as we go along. Where there are issues raised with minerals and waste, we need to know, I need to know how they will be dealt with. So we'll cover those.
So those will be covered later.
Yes.
And
I need to know the implications of the modifications of taking out those policies from the plan. What are the implications? And we'll go through those as we go. I'm just going to take one more question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You will be more aware than most of us that modifications to wording in a plan have nothing to do with the integrity and the cohesion of the policy which is being proposed to be removed from that plan to the viability of the plan itself, because it is underpinning so many other aspects of the plan, not least the sustainability question that has already been raised at this session. I note that a so-called minor modification that was made by the Council post-submission included the words tertiary facilities in relation to education. Now actually what that means, it's only two words. What it means for the plan, as many people in this room know, is the projected arrival of a new university in Herefordshire with projections of up to 5,000 students over the next 10 years and during the course of the planned period, together with all the implications of that for housing, waste management and everything else. So I'm just flagging up that a modification in wording is very different from the wide implications of that wording for the integrity and viability of the whole plan.
Absolutely, and what I would say on that is that I just ask the council to look at that point. We won't stress it now, but it is something with all the modifications, if they need to be made or minor, better safe than sorry. Okay, thank you all. We'll have a short break and we'll come back at quarter past when we proceed to matter 2.